What's up, REIT Ballers? This is M. Glad. We are back for another edition of REIT Ball. M. Glad here with co-host Spurt Leasy. How are you, sir?
What's going on, everybody? How you doing tonight? How you doing?
Hey, man, I can answer for myself, man. I'm doing okay. I hope everyone else
good.
is doing good too, and ready to kick off a new week. We have some good stuff to talk about this week. We'll give a market update. I think you're going to talk about NBA, right?
Yeah, excited. NBA season's coming back at the end of July. We'll go ahead and talk a little bit about it in a little bit.
Cool. We'll talk about that, and then we have an exciting announcement at the end, about our news that we're going to talk about as well at the end of the podcast. So tune in for the entire show. You'll hear some good things in the end, but we'll kick it right off in the market. Some quick market updates from this past week, and then after that, we'll get into sports.
Definitely.
You ready, Spurleasy?
Let's go.
All right. So of course, this is going to be a redundant theme of a choppy market, right? Until we know what's going on with COVID. Of course, there's rapid increase in cases. So people are getting a little nervous. People are trying to figure out what's going to happen next. Could we potentially close down again? Are we just going to power through it? What options do we have? So I think the biggest news this past week was really about the Fed. So the Federal Reserve, they decided to place some temporary restrictions on banks as far as putting limits essentially on their bank dividends to shareholders. And the thought is they want to be able to have, an additional safety net. So in case we have another round and we dip into another deep recession, just like we did a few months ago, the thought is after stress tests, the Fed thinks that 25% of the banks could be tight on reserves if we were to face another deep recession. So by limiting some of the dividend payouts, the thought is to have, increase the reserve and make sure the balance sheets are even stronger just in case. Another news specific to real estate, we had hotel occupancy. So it's up 44%. We've talked about hotels this entire time during the pandemic. They're up 44%. Still have some challenges ahead. But, the good news is it looks like, people are starting to get a little more comfortable. I have a friend who owns hotels across Eastern Europe. And I remember when he had only 21 guests across 42 hotels. Think about that.
Yeah.
Think about that. So I know he's happy to see people are returning to hotels. So the S&P, the Dow Jones, and the NASDAQ, they all had losses from 2.4 to roughly 2.8% this past week. Data and infrastructure, going back to REITs for the year, they are up close to 20% for the year. So think about through the pandemic, they still performed. And we've talked about that in prior podcast episodes. But if you're just tuning in for the first time, it's really about innovation. It's about the future. When you think about the cloud, data servers, connectivity, those are really your data center and your infrastructure REITs, which is why you're starting to see them perform and not really be, not have as much volatility as some of the other REITs, like a hotel or a retail REIT. So the next piece I'll talk about is the rent collection. So we actually posted this last week on social media, and we talked about the rent collections, and this was off of a REIT source where we had the rent collections from April through June. So if you look at industrial, really industrial, it was at 99%, almost 100%, because there's a huge demand for industrial. And the thought is that there should be another increase in demand, roughly, I think it's 500 million square feet additional needed from e-commerce. And we will validate that number, but I believe it's around 500 million. But the thought is that because of e-commerce, there's going to be even more demand than there is industrial. So that's why industrial continues to do well. So it was 99.97%. It did kind of taper off a little bit, but it's still at 98% in June for rent collections. If you look at apartments, around 90% in April. But now it's up to 97.5% on average. Office was at 94% in April, and then now it's at 96% in June. Healthcare was at 87% in April. Now in June, it's at 95. Even retail was at 46% rent collection, and now it's up to 60.5 on average on all the different retail types. So we are seeing some good numbers. Hopefully, we continue in that direction. But I thought that that's strong indicators that hopefully asset prices, or rent stabilization, asset stabilization will look good in the next quarter. And as long as we don't have another kind of step back. But that's all I wanted to talk about for the market updates. I want to just pass it on to you, Spur Leasy, talk a little bit about sports and NBA. What's going on in that world?
Okay, we got NBA starting to open back up towards the end of July. July 30th is actually when they're going to start. It originally was July 31st, but they moved it back one day. So it's interesting to see that get started. Lately in the news, they have been testing a lot of NBA players to prepare for everyone to enter what they're calling the bubble out in Orlando. And I want to say, like in the last 5 days, 16 players have tested positive.
Wow.
But yeah. But majority of the reports say that they should be fine within the next couple of weeks before the season starts. So it's kind of interesting to see how that plays out.
Did any of like the big stars or anybody report having?
No, I mean, I haven't heard anyone, let's say, that made the All-Star team. I guess we'll consider them the big stars. No one from that list has been reported. You got players like I've heard Buddy Hield, Jabari Parker on the Kings. So I'm pretty sure the total number was 16.
Okay.
I think out of 320. So I mean that's definitely is a good sign to see how things are going to keep going.
I wonder if these are the players who were maybe out when they weren't supposed to be. They weren't in quarantine or isolation.
Quarantine. I don't know. I mean, it is definitely interesting to hear. I've heard a lot of them don't have symptoms, so that could be interesting to see how that plays out. But just to get the season started, the first 2 days we have some pretty big national TV games that they've planned out. July 30th, we have the Jazz versus the Pelicans. And also on July 30th, we have the first matchup between the Clippers versus the Lakers. Then the following day, we have the Grizzlies versus the Trailblazers, Celtics versus the Bucks, and Rockets versus the Mavericks opening up. It's gonna be interesting to see how these play out. The Lakers are currently, I think, 5.5 games in first. I think the Bucks are 6.5 games in first. So they literally have to lose all 8 games, and then the second place teams pretty much have to go undefeated in order to take those crowns. So I think we'll definitely see the Lakers and the Bucks be the 2 number 1 seeds going into the playoffs.
Yeah, I was going to say all the teams that are here, they're all the top teams left. So it seems like every matchup will be great, right?
Yeah, I mean, you got 22 teams that are entering the bubble. I want to say they're all. I think the lowest team might be like 3 or 4 games back to make the playoffs. So it's. I would say the top 16 are pretty much settled outside of that 8 seed in the West, where you have Portland and New Orleans trying to take over Memphis. So it'll be interesting to see how all that goes.
I was gonna say best game is that July 31st when my man Dame, he has some stuff to prove, man. He has some, I'm betting on Dame to make it to the playoffs. I'm still pulling.
Betting on Dame. So you got the Grizzlies and the Blazers. You got Dame versus Jay Morant, who should be the Rookie of the Year because he had an excellent season and definitely played the most games between him and Zion. So it should be a great matchup for that 8 seed.
Cool, man. Cool. Well, I'm all for the competition. So speaking of competition, was that the last of the NBA comp before we jump into this REIT ball stuff?
Yeah, let's get started. Let's talk about C Wed's team and who's outperforming over there.
Yeah, for sure. So CWED had the biggest loss this past week. So 3.5% portfolio uh, dropped this past week, and then after that, you and I both had a decrease as well, of a little less than 3%. So all of us pretty much did poorly with stock market in general. But so this guest portfolio or CWES portfolio is still in last since the draft. It's up 2.76%. Your portfolio is up 4.73%, and mine is up 6.41%. So as we get ready to approach these playoffs or whatever, this new COVID schedule, I'm still up front. So you could say I'm like the Lakers going into this. It's very hard for me to lose, pretty much.
I can get it.
Even though you've closed that gap quite a bit. So on the first portfolio, we'll talk about with the biggest losses this past week. The lowest performer was Global Medical REIT, and that is GMRE. Is a ticker symbol. Excuse me, the ticker symbol. I don't like to pronounce worst performers. It's hard for me to do that. So we don't have many on my team. So so that's assigned to Devin Booker as a shooting guard. And you want to talk about Booker, and then I'll jump into the REIT.
Definitely. So Devin Booker, 6'5" guard out of Kentucky, high draft pick in 2015, round 1 pick 13. Great young player, made his first All-Star team this year. Definitely earned it. He's on the Phoenix Suns. The team's not that good, but Devin Booker definitely shows out every time he steps on the court. Actually had a 70-point game in 2017 against the Celtics. I being a Laker fan, I love when anyone destroys the Celtics. So, but yeah, 70-point game. We haven't seen anything like that since Kobe did 81. But yeah, Devin put up 70 in one night. So definitely a great player. I don't know if Phoenix is the place where he should be unless they're able to surround him with more talent. You got James Jones, who's the general manager over there in Phoenix, ex-NBA player. A lot of people know him from the Heat and the Cavs.
I was going to say he played for the Heat, right?
Yeah, he's known as the guy who went to the finals 6 years in a row. That James Jones. So. But pretty much he followed LeBron wherever he went, so that's how that worked out. Yeah, he's the general manager, so hopefully he can get Devin Booker some talent over there, and Phoenix can make a run.
No, so you said it may not be a good fit in Phoenix. Is there like one team you have in mind where he would be a perfect fit, where they're just missing like a Booker, and if Booker was on the squad, like they would have a chance at the championship?
I don't know. In today's NBA, you kind of got to team up with folks. I know he's really good friends, and they've definitely talked as far as wanting to play with each other at some point. But D'Angelo Russell and Karl Anthony Towns, who are on Minnesota, so maybe you could maybe you could plug Devin Booker into Minnesota, since the three of them want to play together, and they'll have their own little young, Space Jam Monster team to see what they can do.
No, that would be a decent squad, actually. I was watching about Clyde Drexler, and we'll jump into Global Medical REIT after this thing on Clyde Drexler. And I didn't realize there was something with Houston and Portland the year that Michael Jordan, or no, I think the year that Clyde was a year before Michael Jordan, right?
As far as being drafted?
Yeah.
Drafted. I think I'd have to look that up.
So there was something with a trade with Portland and Houston to where it could have been Hakeem Olajuwon, Clyde, and Jordan. But Houston, I think, declined the trade.
Wow.
and their alternative pick, how it worked, it did not work out for them.
Oh
But
no,
like,
no.
yeah, but like,
That would
I
have been
mean,
crazy.
Clyde ended up in Houston in the end. But
Hmm.
yeah, but I thought that was fascinating. When you talk about Dream Team, could you imagine Clyde, who was overshadowed, unfortunately, with his greatness by Jordan, and then
I mean,
Akeem Olajuwon?
Jordan. I heard a tape of audio tape of Jordan saying that Clyde was just as good as him. He just didn't know how to play the political game. So
I can
that's
see that. They said that he was really quiet.
yeah. So that's definitely an interesting take on it.
Yeah, no, I saw some highlights. It was phenomenal. But let me jump into Global Medical REIT. So they're headquartered in Bethesda, Maryland. Their market value is almost 510 million. They're established in 2014, so a fairly new REIT. The first 18 months, they pretty much acquired a portfolio of 110 million dollars. And then in 2016, they raised an additional $150 million, and then they went public in 2016. So very, very new REIT. They're focused on medical facilities. By the end of 2016, they had acquired 219 million worth of real estate. A property that I'm going to talk about today. You can see the picture if you're on YouTube. If you're on the podcast, hop over to YouTube and you can see an example. Star Medical Center out of Plano, Texas. So it was acquired in January of 2016, and that's when they did a lot of the acquisitions. As I mentioned, 24,000 square feet, state-of-the-art surgical hospital, 100% leased, long-term triple net lease. So we talked about triple net, I think, the last podcast episode, where essentially the tenant is treating it as if they own the property. They're paying for the taxes, insurance, maintenance, and everything, and the owner is just pretty much collecting a check. So it may be a smaller payout or a smaller dividend, flowing out to the investor, but you could look at it as a more stable and conservative investment long term, because you have almost like a coupon with the bond. You have this, I don't want to say guaranteed, but you have a pretty stable cash flow because you have this long term tenant in there. And this building, Star Medical Center in Plano, it was built in 2013 and has over 40 physicians at that facility. Pretty brand new. I mean, it's a clean property, man. It almost looks like Star
Oh,
Trek
really?
a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the whole architecture scheme going on here is definitely
It's definitely
futuristic.
innovative, right? So,
Uh,
so for the week, they are, they're very small in the overall portfolio. They're less than 1% of the entire portfolio, and they lost 8.2% this past week, which is a pretty big drop.
mhm.
And then the top performer for the same portfolio is SBA Communications, and they are tied to Jason Tatum. So you want to hop in and talk about, and SBA is SBAC is a ticker symbol. It's infrastructure, and we'll talk about infrastructure. And Global Medical REIT, that was the healthcare, of course. But after you talk about Jason Tatum, we'll jump in and talk about infrastructure a little bit. So, what are your thoughts on Jason Tatum? I think you said he was was it you or was it one of our guest hosts that said he was like one of the in the future he would be one of the best, a Hall of Famer? Is that accurate?
I believe it. I mean, he definitely has the skill set. He's a what's this, his third year in the league?
Yes,
Drafted
man.
2017, the third pick. He came right behind Markelle Fultz and Lonzo Ball in the draft. The Celtics.
Luck to her. That was a pretty pickup, because look what happened to
That
Fultz,
was
and look
that
what
was an
happened to.
excellent pickup. And the interesting thing is the Celtics actually had the number one pick in that draft and traded that pick to Philadelphia. So they actually got additional assets,
Wow.
multiple picks in the future, and
Yeah.
got Jason Tatum, and
Wow.
consequently avoided Markelle Fultz, who's actually playing decent now. I'm really rooting for the kid to make a comeback, but the
Yeah.
first 2.5 years of his career
Yeah.
is not what he was hoping for.
No, it's so
But
unfortunate. It's such an odd injury that he had to
yeah,
go through
yeah,
physical therapy.
and totally relearned his entire shooting form.
I mean, what does that say about you when you have to relearn a shot and you're still competing at an NBA level?
True.
That's
I mean,
phenomenal.
it all comes down to potential. I mean, that's
Right.
really why the NBA does drafts. They're drafting on potential a lot of the time. And to Markelle Fultz's credit, he led college in scoring when he was there. So they definitely know what he can do. But back to Jason Tatum out of Duke. You know how we feel about those Duke players, but
how you feel about the Duke players?
He, to his defense, he was only there 1 year, so I doubt that they rubbed on him off on him too much. But he got drafted by Boston. This is his first year. He made the All-Star team. He was on the All NBA rookie team. Currently averaging 23.6 points a game, 7 rebounds, a little under 3 assists. So for his third year, he's definitely a force to be reckoned with. I mean, and he came into the NBA firing. I mean, if you think about his rookie year, they went 7 games with Cleveland in the Eastern Conference Finals. So that was kind of
When I
his
first saw him, I was like,
entrance to the
wow.
NBA. Yeah,
he balled out that year. That was crazy.
So that definitely that taught him what the NBA is all about. So I definitely see good things about him in the future.
Yeah, to not get nervous, at that level, that's crazy.
Right.
So I'll talk about SBA. So we talked about the future as far as Jason Tatum in the future. If you think about infrastructure, it's kind of the same deal, right? Like there's great potential in the future for infrastructure. A lot of people are familiar with tech stocks and anything that has to do with the cloud. Well, if you think about infrastructure, this is the landlord, the cloud's landlord, if you think about it. So, it's housing data, it's keeping data secure, it's exchanging data, cell towers, things like that. That's all infrastructure. So, for all of you out there who are not familiar or this is your first time listening, when you think about infrastructure, think innovation, think 5G as we get into this 5th generation of wireless communication and telecommunications. The infrastructure REITs are going to play a big role in that growth. So SBA, they were founded in 1989. They're headquartered in Boca Raton, Florida. Their current market value is $32.84 billion. They have thousands of towers across all 50 states in the U.S., as well as Canada, Central and South America, as well as South Africa. So they buy towers as well as invest in tower developers, folks who are interested in developing towers themselves. And then they also have rooftop acquisition. So I don't know if you've seen Annie with Jamie Foxx, but how he had the little tower in Statue of Liberty when he was in the helicopter. Any people who saw the new Annie, but so it's kind of like that. Like they acquire space, right, or they go to the owner of the property and then lease out a tower that's on the rooftop or an antenna site and lease it out to wireless communication carriers. So that's part of how they generate cash flow.
Gotcha. And so just like Jason Tatum's going to be the future of the league, they're looking to be the future of the industry, huh?
Yeah, infrastructure. I mean, as long as data continues to grow, as far as usage, consumer usage, and 5G continues to move forward, like infrastructure is a long term. I think you have to find not all REITs and not all infrastructure REITs are going to be equal, but I think a long term strategy, long term play when you're thinking about the future. I mean, I think it's a strong argument for infrastructure.
Okay, awesome.
So let's go to your portfolio. So you were
best
still
portfolio.
Numbers say you're second. So I mean, I don't know. We need to make sure that at some point, REIT needs to do some community initiatives where we speak to schools. We need to make sure you don't, because you're going to talk about being second is okay. Don't worry about winning, folks. Being second place is the best. No, but so you did lose 2.73%. You're still since the draft, you're at 4.73. So you're still up, and your best performer I'm sorry, your worst performer was American Tower Corp. So that's
Okay.
AMT, and they actually are wow, they're pretty decent. They're 25. Is that right? They're 25% of your portfolio. And you lost 7% this past week.
That hurt. That
Now,
hurt.
it hurt a little bit. But I do like American Tower, and not, again, this is for information and entertainment only, right? But as far as them being infrastructure, same thing, cell tower. So if you think they're known for like Verizon, Sprint, T-Mobile, like, so if you think about the cell towers and to be able to connect with your cell phone, and as well as, again, the long-term 5G play, American Tower Corp is going to execute and be a part of that expansion. The difference I would say with American Tower and SBA, I believe 80% of their revenue is from the US, where I think 44% of American Tower is international. And the one risky piece maybe is they have a little bit more emerging market exposure compared to SBA, but both of them are solid infrastructure REITs. American Tower Corp is headquartered in Boston. Their market value is $109 billion. They have a low dividend. We started talking about dividend, I think, last episode or the episode before, and it's 1.6% every year. Like, so for you, you're younger and you're, looking to invest in appreciation. And if you had some type of dividend, you would probably want it a little bit higher, right? Like, even if you're retiring, like, that's not very enticing on paper, like 1.67. But a lot of that has to do with their fast growth. Like, they doubled their growth or their value, I think, in, I want to say 7 to 8 years, from 2012 until now. So strong appreciation. They've also committed to 20% dividend growth every year. So, they will continue to grow on the dividend side. They have global exposure, 170,000 towers across the US or across the globe. 130 of those communication sites are in 18 countries outside of the US, over 5 continents. Wow. So again, a lot of global exposure, where SBA is a little bit more domestic. And again, they construct towers. They sell antenna space to sell customers and communication providers. But I think that one of the more interesting points, if someone was looking to work for a REIT, Fortune magazine actually named American Tower Corp one of the world's most admired companies this year.
Wow.
So on top of it being long-term, looking good with the 5G and expansion,
great
and
place to work.
30% increase in data consumption annually. And I couldn't believe 5G is supposed to be 100 times faster than our current 4G. I thought it was already fast.
Hey, but it can always be faster, that's for sure.
So. Yeah, they're proving that. So that's American Tower Corp, and they were tied to your player Gallinari.
Danilo, my boy Danilo, he is a seasoned vet, drafted back in 2008 in the first round, 8th pick overall.
Has he lived up to 8th pick?
When he plays, for sure. His issue has always been injury. He's played for the Knicks, he's played for the Nuggets, the Clippers, and now he's on Oklahoma City over there with a CP3, and they're in the playoffs making a run. But his issues, he's can't go a full season. Even this year, he's averaging 19 points, 5 rebounds, 2 assists. So he's definitely contributing on every team he's ever been on. It's just, can he get on the floor? Can he stay there? But coming from Italy, he's balled out. I mean, he's definitely one of the best players from Italy that I've ever seen.
Well, I wanted to talk about his injuries. Like, and you said he's been here since 2008.
2008, yeah. So he's been in the league 12 years.
So he's lasted, but at the same time, he's older as a player now. Does it deteriorate a little more? Will I wonder how. But I mean, it sounds like he's performing, so that part's great.
Yeah, I mean, Oklahoma's doing great right now. Nobody thought they would be where they are, and they've been able to put together a team that's really outperformed where the beginning of the year predictions after they lost Westbrook and traded for Chris Paul and lost Paul George. But Oklahoma's going to be a great team to watch in the future because they picked up so many assets this year based off of that Paul George and Westbrook trade that I think they definitely going to put together a great draft over the next couple of years. And Oklahoma's always drafted well. James Harden, Russell Westbrook, Kevin Durant, Jeff Green, Serge Ibaka. I mean, Sam Presti has put together an amazing squad there over the years. So I'm definitely confident that he could do it again.
No, absolutely. No, so what do they do this year, like in the playoffs? How do you think they'll?
I think they'll end up being a pretty good first round team. I want to say they're either, I don't know their exact position, but I want to say they're somewhere between 5 and 7. So I think they'll definitely be playing on the road. But technically everyone's in Orlando, so no one's on the road.
Yeah, right.
But I do think that they can upset whoever they might play in the first round. Can't sleep on them.
Okay, they might make a little run. Cool.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for that. So your top performer on the other end is Digital Realty Trust.
Mm-hmm.
Their ticker symbol is DLR, and they are a data center and 14.5% of your portfolio. So both of your this week, American Tower was 25%. Yep, and Digital Realty Trust is 14.5%. Now, I say best performer, but we all didn't do great, but this was at least almost, it was flat. It was like 50 basis points, which is half of 1%, right? So 0.5% gain, better than a loss. I'll take it. As far as their dividend, it's 3.2% dividend. Now, we'll talk about dividend. It's the annual percentage that will get paid out to the investor. So a REIT appreciates as well as offering a dividend every year. Now, you can get that paid quarterly, you can get it monthly, just depends on what the REIT says. A lot of times it's going to be quarterly. And 3.2%, but again, you're not going to invest for the dividend. Like you don't chase a yield. So if something was, one of your REITs, I think is 9% dividend, it doesn't mean that it's the best dividend because number one, it may not be guaranteed. They may cut their dividend or not pay it. And usually they're trying to, they need to entice an investor somehow by making their dividend attractive, So just something to think about. But as far as Digital Realty Trust, I'll go with Digital Realty Trust, and then we'll talk about the player Blake Griffin, who's tied to DLR, because I have a question to follow up on Gallinari with Blake that I'd like to hear your thoughts on. So the Digital Realty Trust, they were founded in 2004, headquartered in San Francisco. They have a market value of $37.7 billion. They own interest in 275 data center facilities in 21 countries. And they have a 34.5 million square feet in across the US, across Europe, Asia, Canada, and Australia. But their largest presence is Northern Virginia, Dallas, Chicago, New York State, Silicon Valley, and London. The thing that I like best about DLR is they're focused on green or sustainability. So they have a pretty impressive sustainability program that they're focused on. And I believe it's either the largest, if not the largest, close to the largest sustainable program for data centers. So I thought that was pretty impressive. And so they focus, again, cloud and IT services, connectivity, data servers, data exchange, and data security, So same thing I said about data centers for the past couple of weeks. Your data centers and infrastructure are going to be your two, during this time at least, your two kind of forward-thinking, innovative plays as we continue to get more and more connected. The interesting part, though, I saw one analyst was talking about another factor that could drive the success or additional success for these REITs: work from home.
Yeah.
Because you need more connectivity than you normally would, right? So
True.
There's more demand there. So I thought that was interesting. So the property we're going to talk about is on the screen right now. If you're tuned in on the podcast, again, jump over to YouTube. Is the Cloud House West, and it's 19,000 square feet. It's a data center, very clean building based in London, in the UK. So that'll be, again, we're sharing these visual properties just so you know, if this is your first time tuning in. REITs, yes, you can invest in them like you do stocks, buy and sell, just like you do stocks. They're a basket of real estate, their real estate portfolio, and they are physical assets. So what we try to do on each episode is try to connect you to a visual aspect or a visual building within each REIT. So if you find them interesting, you can do more research. Again, we're not recommending which ones to buy or sell. We're just giving this information so that you can then go and look, and then you can see the pictures of them. And hey, if you like the buildings and their story and their strategy, maybe it's something that you want to consider. So that's
invest.
That
I was saying, yeah, if you like their story and what they're doing, go ahead and invest. Take a shot.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely, it has to fit the investor profile, the risk tolerance, and all of that, right? They have tons. That's what I love about this. Like, we talk about this, Kent, and you were with me through this whole journey. The reason why I started this and said, hey, Kent, do you want to hop on and let's be hosts on REIT Ball and really get this information out, is because of the transparency of REITs. Right. So people can go in and do their own research. You don't have to believe, my opinion may be different than the investors, right? But they can go and literally open up all the financials and make a decision for themselves, which I think is very, very powerful. And it's all from your laptop, while people with decades of experience manage the portfolio for you. You can sleep at night while it performs, and not have to worry about all the other risks of, potentially transferring your money to the wrong people or trying to do it on your own for the first time and not doing it right. So this is why we do what we do, and this is why we show you physical properties within the REIT, so you know that they are real investments, real estate portfolios that you participate in and you receive all the profits. So, or at least 90% of the profits. Digital Realty Trust is tied to Blake. Now, I remember when Blake came in. I'm a big Blake fan. For Lizzie.
Yeah.
And, we talked about injuries with Gallinari. It's been tough, man. Blake, when I think about Blake Griffin, I almost think about like how Derrick Rose, right? Like, had all these injuries. Like, to me, Derrick Rose was so exciting to watch. And I feel like could have been one of the best point guards to ever play the game. The injuries just held him back, unfortunately. And he still did really well. So I asked you for Blake, like, would he be, first, how many years do you think he has left in his career?
Blake's 31 years old. Drafted in 2009, first pick overall. I mean, I think Blake can keep playing. I don't know if he has like the Derrick Rose story, because Blake's always performed. Maybe up until recently, but he's always performed well after getting injured. As far as points per game, rebounds, and whatnot, it's like he didn't miss a beat. He is one of those players that sat out his rookie year because he got hurt during the preseason before NBA season started. So he did get to sit down, watch, attend coaching sessions for a full year before he ever even stepped on the floor, which I definitely think that helps anyone, and why he was able to still get Rookie of the Year when he came back. But Blake Griffin has been on some great Clipper teams that always fell short. Being a Laker fan, we love to make fun of the Clippers when we can. So the fact that they've never gotten out the second round in the history of their existence is kind of a curse.
Be careful, man. I don't know if whenever someone makes a bold stat comment,
Uh-huh.
like this kicker has never missed inside the 30 and then he misses, right?
I
So
feel you. I
be
feel
careful
you.
as a Lakers
I
fan, man. Be
mean,
careful.
I have been making that statement every year for the last 15 years, and I've never been wrong. Um,
Okay.
I know there's a good chance, there's a pretty great chance I could be wrong this year, but if I'm wrong, I'll take it. But I gotta hope that somehow the Clippers don't make it past the second round again. But Blake Griffin, he's currently on Detroit. I think injuries definitely affected his gameplay this year because he only averaged 15 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists, and I want to say he played under 20 games this year. So I definitely think injury is what caused him not to play as well. Because just a year ago, he was averaging 24 points
Oh wow.
and 8 rebounds and 5 assists. So I definitely think he'll bounce back and play to the Blake Griffin form. 6-time All-Star, 5-time All NBA team. One of the best dunkers in game we've ever seen. Won the slam dunk contest back in 2011.
So real
Um,
quick for dunks, would you
uh-huh.
pick Blake or Sean Kemp?
Um, I have to
Ooh.
go. I mean, it's interesting. Yeah, for sure. I'd have to go. I'd have to go Sean Kemp.
I definitely have
But
to go Sean Kemp.
I don't think it's as far as you might think it is. I think the comparison's very close to what each of them can do in the game.
Yeah, no, definitely. So would you put in the end for Blake when it's all said and done,
Mhm.
probably the injuries, I think it's fair to say maybe didn't help him have his best year some years. But if he was complete, as dynamic as Blake is, do you think he would be one of the best forwards to ever play the game by the time he retires if he didn't have the different nagging injuries?
For sure. Blake has grown as a basketball player since he entered the league. I mean, he's shooting threes at right now at a pretty efficient level.
So will he
So
be one of the best forwards even with the injuries?
no, because he doesn't have the accolades to back it up.
Got it.
I mean, he'll never be in the same conversation as the Tim Duncans, the Kevin Garnetts, and whatnot. But I mean, you'll definitely remember who he is. He had a brother that played basketball as well. They both went to Oklahoma, and you know that family has great basketball players, and Griffin has definitely lived up to that.
Yeah,
So I definitely don't think he's ever going to be mentioned with the top power forwards of all time. But like I said, 6-time All-Star, 5-time All NBA team. So he definitely will be in the books for something.
yeah, for sure, sure.
And then so I mean,
Yeah.
and I'm sorry, go.
No, I was gonna say we're talking about like the what ifs, right? So I
Hmm.
know you were talking about, and I think you get into the playoff matchups and stuff like that.
Hmm.
You've been covering what is it, the bubble? Is that what they're calling it in Disney?
That's what they're. Yep, the bubble, the Disney
Yeah,
bubble.
you've been covering the news for us with that. So, uh, man, when it's all said and done, when you talk about MVP and when you
Hmm.
talk about whoever wins the championships, whether it's the Clippers, whether it's Dame in Portland, whether it's small chance maybe your Lakers, when it's all said and done, does it? I mean, will it count the same as a regular season? What do you think?
Me personally, whoever wins the MVP, which I think is going to come down to one of these two players we have on the screen, LeBron and Giannis. I don't see a reason why you should put an asterisk. I think they'll put an asterisk if it's LeBron. I think they won't put an asterisk if it's Giannis. I think that's just how
Really,
society works, unfortunately.
really?
But really, but you could give it to either one of these guys. I mean, LeBron, 17th year in the league, leads the league in assists. Giannis is putting up monster numbers. So I mean, he has definitely made a case on why he deserves it as well. He won the MVP last year. So can he go back to back? We'll see. We don't know. But as far as the asterisk, I've never heard anyone get an asterisk before in the NBA. I've never heard anyone say Tim Duncan has an asterisk. I've never heard anyone say LeBron previously has an asterisk, and they both played and won in lockout seasons that weren't full seasons. So
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, most of the season was played, right?
right,
So
they played roughly about 60, 62 games, depending on who your team was.
yeah, so I mean, I can't see how, as far as MVP, I can't see how this break would take anything for LeBron, whoever wins, right?
Yeah,
Giannis, LeBron, or who you said that's the top two. So,
most likely.
yeah. So if one of those guys wins, I don't see how it's even playing field. Everyone had a break. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So, and then everyone's coming back on and finishing the season, and most of it was finished, or most of the season was played before all this happened. So I would agree with you, man. Whoever wins it, I mean, I'm a fan of both players, and whoever wins it, I think it's fair game. They need to own that MVP for that year. Would you say the same, considering a team dynamic and the lack of practice and coming together as a team and the cohesiveness that it takes to win a whole championship?
Mm-hmm.
Would you say because of this now, is there an asterisk there?
I wouldn't give an asterisk to the team either. I mean, unfortunately, it's going to be the same outcome. If Lakers win, there'll be an asterisk. If Lakers don't win, there won't be an asterisk. That's just how society works when dealing with LeBron James. But I don't think there should be an asterisk. I mean, everyone is playing under the same circumstances. Everyone has the same allowed it time to practice. Everyone. So I don't see how
I wonder if there's teams that are like secret, like meeting on the low.
Sure. I definitely think there's teams that are practicing. I read an article last week that JJ Redick was dry snitching for the most part. That's kind of what they do over there at Duke. But JJ Redick was talking to a reporter and said that there's a guy in I believe in Bel Air who has a carbon copy Laker court in his backyard, and supposedly that there's been team meetings there practicing. I wouldn't put it past them. I think every team's doing it. I mean, I think
they have to.
I think scouts are working out college players as well for the draft coming up when they're not supposed to. So, but in the words of
I mean, I think everyone's doing it, So
sure.
it just is what it is this year. It's weird, but in the end, everyone's kind of in the same predicament. And I think whoever wins it wins it. I think it would be awesome if somehow it did increase the probabilities of an underdog winning, because I just love to see those stories.
It could.
But a lot of times it's hard in the NBA. You see it more like March Madness, college basketball.
Yeah, I mean,
harder.
Anytime you got a 7-game season, I mean, a 7-game series, the best team's gonna win.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard for an underdog to win 4 games out of 7, and do it over and over again. So
yeah. Cool. Well, thanks for that recap, man. I'll jump back into REIT ball for my portfolio. Actually, like I said, still first place, 6.41% since the draft. I lost this week 2.9%, so almost 3%. Let's go with my worst performer first. So my worst performer this week is Essential Properties. They actually are 2.16% of my portfolio, and they have a 6% dividend. And this past week, they lost 8.54%. So it's interesting, man. This is a very interesting REIT, and they're tied to Markieff Morris, which I know you'll get into after. And the visual that we have for the property is Auto Spa Express in Bel Air, Maryland. So why I say this REIT is interesting. So it's headquartered in Princeton, New Jersey, market value of $1.44 billion. on paper it feels like it's super risky, but so like single tenant property. So folks who have been listening, that just means one person or one company is paying the rent, right? In this case, the picture that we have is an auto spa or auto wash facility. They have auto shops as well. They have fast food restaurants. They have daycare. They have a daycare, at least one, maybe a couple. Gyms, movies, and all single tenants, right?
Hmm.
So almost everything that they have in their portfolio, other examples are like Taco Bell or Crunch Fitness. I would think, with the exception of like fast food, almost every other or company that would gravitate toward this REIT has had to have struggled during coronavirus. Like,
Right.
who's going to a daycare? Who's going to the movies? The movies closed down.
Hmm.
Um, so it's
The gym's closed down,
the
everything.
gyms closed down, right? So almost like their example, like a lot of since COVID was actually declared a official pandemic, the REIT has dropped 28% since like March 10th, March 11th. But 2019, it had the third best return for the year at 86.9%.
So you think they can have a comeback once everything settles down?
86.9%. I mean, I think it's one of those things with the market, like in a normal scenario, I mean, you're always going to have fast food restaurants. I think that's fine. Daycares in a traditional environment, children are always going to go to daycares. People typically
Hmm.
go to gyms. People go to the movies. So that even though there are single tenants, I feel like in a normal environment, um, that's why it performs so well. And that's why, it may not be the quote unquote sexy tenants like an auto wash, but people wash their cars, right?
Right.
So as long as they're washing their cars, the company, the auto spa is getting paid and they're able to pay their rent. So, essential properties is one of those things, again, it's single tenant. They're looking at kind of these various businesses to operate in their buildings, and they've taken a massive hit. But again, in a normal environment, they should be able to rebound. To me, I'm a little nervous about single tenant just in general.
Hmm.
But I think if you're going to do it, you do it with the REIT because that gives you their diversification. I doubt their entire portfolio in a strong environment is all going to underperform. So,
Right.
that's why it makes sense for a REIT. I don't know if it would make sense if you were just investing on your own to do some single tenant investment into a building. And
Hmm.
then they have a dividend of 6%. I think I mentioned that. So that's my worst performer. And they're tied to Markeith Morris. So are those twin brothers, right? The Morris brothers?
Yeah, you got the Morris twins. One's currently on the Lakers. That's Markeith. One's currently on the Clippers.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, so they play in the same arena every night. Um, I think Markeith was recently on Detroit when the season started and was traded to the Lakers during the trade deadline. Oh, actually, no, I take that back. He was cut and then signed to the Lakers. So they needed depth. Um, Markeith is a great role player. Um, Actually, another funny thing about him is Markeith was drafted in 2011 as the 13th overall pick in the first round, and his brother was literally drafted the 14th pick. So
Wow.
they've been they've been tied
Crazy.
together since birth.
Yeah.
Um, but currently, Markeith is averaging 10.1 points, a little under 4 rebounds and 2 assists. That's on the season. On the Lakers, where he's only played 8 games, he's only averaging a little under 5 points. So he hasn't come in and actually been able to do what he's known to do. But that comes with probably less playing time. You're playing on the court with LeBron, Anthony Davis, so there isn't really too many shots that can go around. So I mean, I'm pretty sure what the Lakers were looking forward to Markieff is just to play his role, play defense, and make the shot if you're open and someone passes you the ball. So that's definitely what we're depending on him to do in the playoffs coming up. And he can guard his brother when we play the Clippers. That's
He
definitely
definitely
a
knows how his
plus.
brother plays.
Exactly. So that's definitely a plus, and like he's just your typical role player, born in Philadelphia. So you should be rooting for him, Mark. I know you're tied to pretty much anyone that comes out of Philly. So
No, that's actually a great segue. So the best performer for me this week is also out of Philadelphia. And
there you
I've
go.
been talking about this REIT for a while, baby. I couldn't wait to talk about them in this episode. That's IRT, Independence Realty Trust, folks. I look at them as an underdog in residential. I've been looking at them for a while, talked about them for years, I think, with a few years now with you, Spurleasy. So they're tied to Terry Rozier. But IRT, again, they're based out of Philly. This past week, they're 1.5% of my portfolio. They have a dividend of 6.86%. I believe it was just cut, though. It was just reduced. And they were about flat. I know they were a top performer, but most of my REITs were negatives this past week. They were up 27 basis points, so 0.27%. So almost a third of 1% is what IRT moved this past week. And again, they're a residential REIT, and their current market value is $1 billion. They own and manage. The reason why I really like them is they're very similar to the strategy that we're kicking off, that we'll talk about by the end of this episode. But they are focused on primarily the South and the Midwest, Southeast and the Midwest west of the U.S. Some of the core cities: Atlanta, Louisville, Memphis, and Raleigh. Year over year, pre-COVID, they had roughly a 55% gain. So they had great appreciation. It wasn't as wild as Essential Properties in their 86% or whatever it was, but 55% in the residential space is not bad either. They have 58 communities, 15,805 apartment units. The average community age, so the average building age, is 19 years. So that's Class B. We talked about classes on a prior episode. Class A. Class A is your bells and whistles, luxury building, doorman, everything you could think of. Your newest, and then the Class B is under that. So they focus a lot on the Class Bs, and one of the articles I read about IRT is they had a focus of investing $11,000 per unit in renovations and upgrades, and that got them about a 16 to 18% return on their investment as they upgraded the units. The property that you see on the screen, if you're tuned into YouTube, is Lakes of Northdale Apartment. So Lakes of Northdale Apartment Homes. They're based out of Tampa, Florida. They're 1 and 2 bedrooms, up to 1,100 square feet, and their rent starts at $1,040 a month.
And they're lakefront, which is nice.
And they're lakefront, yeah, beautiful building, beautiful views on the lake. So and another piece that I like, Independence Realty Trust, their NOI increased about 7%. Between first quarter of 2019 and first quarter of 2020, right before COVID hit. So NOI growth of 7%. So again, net operating income. We talked about this, I think, around the draft early on. We first started talking and having REIT ball episodes. But NOI is revenue minus expenses. So your revenue may be rent, it may be application fees, it may be laundry facility fees, it may be parking fees, any late fees that you earn, or just really anything that comes from operating that building. And then you back out all of your expenses, and then you get your NOI, or your net operating income, and that's pre-debt payment. So that's before you pay your mortgage in the real estate world. is your NOI. So it's revenue minus expenses before you pay your mortgage. That's going to be your NOI. So they had some decent growth there as well. So, I think they're going to see volatility like anyone else during this time. But I like that they are in residential in the Southeast as well as the Midwest. Like that they're roughly, mostly Class B, and they focus on good school districts. They focus on places with strong employment hubs as well as high quality retail. So they know that they're going to get that solid tenant flow and the profile that they want, that they're looking for in the Class B. So I'll stop there and tell me, that Terry Rozier is connected to IRT.
You would love Terry Rozier, Mark. You say you always love the underdog. Terry Rozier, drafted in 2015, actually started his playing basketball in the G League. So he went from a G League player to recently signing a 3-year, $56 million deal with Charlotte this past year.
Ooh, talk about progress, man. He was working for it, huh?
For sure. Career highs across the board, 18 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists. He's coming from Boston last year to where he was coming off the bench because they, as you know, they had Kyrie over there. And once Kimbo said that he was out of Charlotte, they ended up doing a sign and trade with Kimba to get Terry into Charlotte and offered him that contract. So Terry's going to be a decent player. I think over the next couple of years. I think he learned a lot at coming from Louisville. But like I said, assigned to G League to now a starter for the Charlotte.
That's awesome, man. I love that story, man. I love it, man.
Yeah.
I feel like that's kind of us in real estate, man. I mean,
Exactly.
We've been working together for a while, and real estate is very hard to get into. It's a very expensive industry. You've got to keep pounding the pavement, man. You have to keep grinding, and you have to. I feel like as long as you have the best intentions, you have the strong work ethic, you start to see the light at the end of the tunnel, and you got to keep driving and focused on it, and know what your purpose is, So I love that story with Terry Rozier, man. Thank you for sharing that.
Definitely.
So final words, man, as we wrap this up. We talked about the portfolios. Any final thoughts for you?
My final thoughts, I wanted to take the time to give a shout out to the one and only half man, half amazing Vince Carter, who recently announced his retirement from the NBA. Vince Carter
I'm silent clapping so I don't make any noise.
Career. Oh no, we can definitely give a nice clap for Vince and his career. He's retiring at the age of 43. One of the last player in the NBA to be drafted in the 90s. So yes, wow. We are officially old.
Wow.
But eight-time All-Star, like I said, drafted in 1998, 5th pick overall, NBA Rookie of the Year, 2000 Slam Dunk champion, which everyone will always remember him for him going, it's over. It's over. Yeah. So that's I just wanted to give a nice salute to Vince. Thank you for everything you've done. I hate to say that you won't be playing in the playoffs this year because Atlanta wasn't able to perform all that well. But your career over the decades, I guess is what we can say right now. Your career over 2 decades was great. Thank you for everything you've done, and that's that.
Man, I was a huge Vince Carter fan, man. So definitely shout out to Vince Carter, man. Thank you for the years. Thank you for the entertainment, the competitiveness, the dunks. I just saw a highlight with him dunking over. Was it an Olympic game maybe when he jumped over the center?
That guy was like
he was waiting for the charge and he jumped over him.
That guy was like 8'13".
Yeah,
I mean, it was ridiculous.
Jumped over him, waiting for the charge. Felt nothing. So no, Vince ridiculous. Carter, thank you for the years, man. Salute to you. Mm-hmm. Congratulations. So my final thoughts, man. I said we had some news, and I'm excited to announce we're doing a small kickoff, a small raise of $20 million that will focus on workforce and affordable housing. It's where our passion is, man. We want to make a difference, and we really just want, no matter what the budget is for a renter or a tenant, we want it to be the best quality for that rent. We want people to be able to come home and feel like it is home, no matter what building you're living in. So we're doing a small $20 million initiative, equity initiative, and then you add the debt. So we'll probably be somewhere with renovations, $50 to $60 million portfolio. We're just kicking off that raise, and we're going to be focused initially in Dallas and Atlanta, and then also looking at some Florida markets as well. But really excited about that, man. It's come together. We finally got the strategy right. It is going to be an extension beyond just the asset, where we also are impacting the communities around the property. So our strategy is a little unique. Just really excited about that. So those are my final thoughts. Stay tuned as we talk a little bit more about that. But hopefully you're picking stuff up off of REIT Ball, and hopefully we will be able to get some guests soon. We wanted to do a couple episodes, but hopefully we'll be able to grab some REIT executives, some real estate professionals, maybe some athletes, and be able to get more and more guests on to tie this all together. Because ultimately we want you to learn. We want you to get access to all this information that's available to you, so you no longer say you can't afford real estate. You can truly afford a portfolio. IRT, my last REIT, was an example. 15,000 apartment units, and you can buy it for roughly $11 a share, right? So hopefully this is helpful. We want to give back. We want to serve you. We want to use our past to hopefully help you in the future, if you're a new real estate investor. So that's all I have, man. Kent, thank you for joining again today.
Always. Just want to let everybody know, check us out on YouTube. You can see it scrolling on the bottom of the screen. We're on YouTube. We're on all your favorite podcast platforms. Just search REIT Ball, subscribe, like, comment. We'll see you next week.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Be safe.